Would you welcome Mike Rampey?
There was a text that went out today to all the Park Plaza church members, and I'm not for sure how to take it. It said, "Suffering, Mike Rampey speaking." So I'm not for sure how that, but I will say that Dave Huey is a wonderful encourager, because early on in this summer series, I showed him this brochure, and I said, "Dave, take a look at this." I said, "They got professors, they got guys with MBAs, they've got deans of colleges. It's just unbelievable." And then at the very end, they've got this heating and air conditioning guy. And Dave Huey never missed a beat. He said they must have had a cancellation. But I really do believe that it was Ed Mosier. Now, you got to give it to Ed. He's done a great job putting some great speakers together. And I really think that he was in his, I've never been to his office, but I'm sure it's a large plush office with a large picture window. That's what I envision. And he was feeling really good about himself because he had got all 12 speakers together. And somebody walked in the office and they said, "Hey, you know, this year there's 13 weeks. And Ed then, "Oh, no, what am I going to do?" And he went to the big picture window. It's 110 degrees outside. And he looks out and there's an air conditioning guy sweating, toiling, suffering. And he said, "If anybody knows suffering, it's a heat and air guy. We got one that just placed membership." You know, tonight I will be sharing our experience. And, you know, when I think of, you know, my topic, I think, well, that it's really not anything in comparison to, you know, Bob Young. He spoke the first night and he talked about the Thanksgiving dinner was set and his parents were on the way to their house just moments before they would be eating, and they got a phone call and his parents had both been killed in a tragic auto accident. And Wes Gocher, when his wife and his wife had premature twins, and all the pain and suffering that they had with raising those kids. And Charles Ricks and the loss of his wife while they still had kids at home. Wes Crawford told a story about their beloved elder from the church where he was from that everybody loved, and he accidentally shot a rifle and it accidentally killed their granddaughter. I think to myself, my trials and sufferings, nothing compared to something like that. The loss of a child, a death, but the bottom line is there's all kinds of suffering. You know, it may be a divorce. It may be sickness, loss of a job. It may be with our elderly. You know, the elderly, the loss of independence or the things that they go through. But every speaker has spoke about how it builds character, how it makes them better, and how it builds a person that can encourage others when they go through similar trials. My wife, Nerissa, my son, David, and I are owners of a heating and air conditioning and plumbing business, Air Assurance Company. It's a blessing to work together because we all have our strengths and weaknesses, and we all build on those strengths, and we've all, you know, been blessed to be together like we are. We started the business in 1985. It was just us, and now we've grown to over 80 employees. We've been blessed, and we've been honored with a lot of accomplishments and a lot of honors. And, you know, we've won Tulsa's Best and Broken Arrow's Best and Bixby's Best and Oklahoma's Best Company to Work For. We've won the Better Business Bureau Honor Roll, Torch Award. Nerissa was selected as the National Woman of the Year, and she was selected by the governor of Oklahoma to be on the Workforce Development Board. Our company was selected as the National Contractor of the Year. David was the youngest president of Rotary, and he oversees the blood drive every year. And all three of us have been on national and local boards serving, whether it be Rotary or civic organizations, OSU, Tulsa Technology. We've always felt that it was a corporate responsibility to give back to our community that we live in. We have an air assurance bike team. We participate in Leadership Broken Arrow, the Chamber of Commerce. And in 2008, things were going great. we were having the time of our lives. You know, Nerissa had been honored with being the honorary mayor of Broken Arrow. And I was selected as being the honorary vice mayor of Broken Arrow. And we got an award, and we got honored in front of hundreds of business leaders. And we even got in the convertible and the Broken Arrow Rooster Day Parade. We went down the parade, and we were passing out candy and waving at the crowds. Everything was going great. And then this happened.
Now, another update to breaking news. The investigation into the Broken Arrow School District deepens. Tonight,
they're robbing
police
from the
are searching
kids, they're
for
robbing
answers.
from the district. They should be embarrassed.
For sure, there's been a lot of finger pointing among those involved in this investigation. In fact, so much so, it's left parents frustrated and wondering exactly who's telling the truth.
Yeah, the first couple years were really, really difficult because literally every night there was a story on every, CBS, NBC, ABC, Fox, on every local news station. Every night there was a picture of our building, there was a picture of one of our trucks, there was a picture of mom or dad. And, every day you come to work and there's a news crew in the street filming a reporter giving her story with our building in the background while we're driving into work or while we're leaving to work or while we're going to lunch it was constant. It was all the time. These people who don't know us, these people that believe everything the media says or whatever are just crucifying my mom and dad. And saying horrible things that, and a lot of it wasn't, it was just people making stuff up again, just wanting to be a part of the story or something. And so literally every day you had this anxiety of what was tomorrow. Like, what are they going to come up with next? What are they going to say next? What, is this going to get out of control to the point where I have to watch somebody come get my dad, take him out in handcuffs or something? Ultimately, there were so many twists and turns within that story over that 3 or 4 years that, you got used to it, or I won't say you got used to it, you came to expect it, and you learned to deal with it a little bit better, but ultimately another thing would happen that was major.
Now to a developing story involving a police
And we begin with new
investigation into
developments in the ruckus.
Could this smoking building hold the smoking gun? Says the company was paid $77,000 for work. Broken Arrow school officials didn't pay. It says several air assurance bills were changed by hand, and 24 documents showed the company billed the district before work was actually requested.
I don't know. That was the hardest part, is being let down by so many people that you held in a high regard. People that you thought were that person that could never think that about you or your family, and ultimately just completely tuck you away and forget about you. There was a lot of late nights, a lot of early mornings together, me, mom, and dad, a lot of hard times. It wasn't my name, it wasn't David Rampey that was in the paper, it was Rampey. But yet to my mom and dad, it was Mike and Nerissa. It was their name. But as it got worse and worse, there were many a times where I would walk in and they would be broken. I never saw that. So it's tough. We shed a lot of tears together. And we prayed a lot, and but they were still stronger than I was from that standpoint, or stronger than I would be. I mean, it reached so many different bounds. That's what makes that story really weird to me, because I've never been involved in something that really so political, so egregious, so misunderstood, so I don't know. I mean, there's so many adjectives to explain it, that, and none of it was true. I say it, God puts you in trials. I don't know that He puts us in trials. I guess the devil probably puts those trials in us, but God helps us, and it's only for the betterment of us, completely.
Well, that's our story. You know, David mentioned all the cameras out. You know, the vans that have the big, tall aerials, those out there in front of the building regularly. I don't know how many pictures they needed of our building. I don't know why they could, you know. What he didn't mention is the obscene phone calls that not only we received, but our employees. We have several employees with us tonight. They received, or the obscene gestures if they seen an air assurance van driving down the road that our employees had to endure, or the threatening phone calls. The stress of 3 audits, an independent audit, a state audit, and an investigative audit by the Attorney General. It didn't show the loss of focus on our business. It did not show we were being investigated by the FBI, the OSBI, the Broken Arrow Police Department, the Attorney General, and the Fire Marshal, and the involvement of 2 state legislators. It did not show the fear in our elderly parents that watched their son's business on the news every night, and the fear that it put in them. And it didn't show how friends distanced themselves in fear that they would be retaliated against by just knowing us. They were accusations of criminal schemes, cover-ups, acts of bilking, bid rigging, defamation, and even setting fire to a public storage building. We were the kind of news that the news loves. You know, the front page kind, the kind that involves taxpayers, the kind that, you know, ripping the taxpayers off, ripping the little children off of the money. We were the perfect. And it created us, in a lot of people, a mob mentality, picketing of the board building. We have some board members here tonight. Thank you for coming. It was a horrible time, and it was a beat down like we'd never had. There were days that a story would come out, and I'd hear Narissa crying in her office, and I'd be the strong one that day, and I'd go in and I'd comfort her. And the very next day, another story would come out, and I'd be the one that's crying. She'd pick me up, or it might be David that would come in and pick us up. You know, I got a problem. I like to fix things. And I figured that I could fix this. You know, if we can just sit down and have a cup of coffee, I think we can work this out. And I was frustrated because I couldn't fix this. And Narissa one day came in and she says, "Mike, will you just stop trying to fix things and put it into God's hands? God will take care of it." Early on, we started seeing some things that it was like God was working through us, through people to get some things done. And there was some key information that we needed in order to defend ourselves. And I knew of a guy, I didn't know his name, and I didn't know how to get a hold of him, that had information that would be good for our case. David and I decided to go to lunch one day, and I said, "Where do you want to go?" He said, "Let's go to Memories of Japan." And I said, okay. Well, halfway there, we said, "Let's go to Charlie's Chicken." Okay, let's go to Charlie's. So we're sitting there, and I'm talking to David, and I said, David, I know of this guy. I don't know his name, though, and if I could just find him, I know he has key information that would help us in our case. And at the same time, I looked over to my left, and the guy is sitting in the table right next to me. Now, you know, we didn't think a lot about it then, but we started seeing other things come back. You know, we started out with this from the very beginning, that whatever was said about us in the press, whatever was people said, we were going to take the high road. We were not going to get down and dirty with them. You know, we're just not going to respond with anything but positive. Now, that's kind of hard when your honor's being challenged, and the media would have loved for us to fire back, but we weren't going to do it. For over 2 years, we were the headline news. Every week, we were the headline news. But we got a little bit of break right in there, and a little bit of it for about 6 months, because right in the middle of it, there was another top story that came along, and it involved the Jinx football program and the coach, Alan Trimble, one of our elders here at Park Plaza. I didn't believe any of what I read there either. I got to where I couldn't believe anything in the paper anyway. So I had never met Alan Trimble or his wife Courtney, and we were at a friend's wedding reception of a mutual friend, large banquet hall, and across the banquet hall there, I seen Alan Trimble and his wife. And I told Naressa, I said, you know what? I said, we know how they feel. Let's go over there and encourage them. So we walked over to their table, and I forgot to introduce myself, and I just walked up and I said, I just want you to know, we know how you feel. Well, Alan Trimble looked up at me, and he didn't know who I was. And he looked up at me like, yeah, you know how we feel. And I said, I'm Mike Rampey, and this is my wife, Narissa, and we're from Air Assurance Company, and we just want you to know we're praying for you, and hang in there, it's okay. Alan stood up, and he shook my hand. He said, you do know how we feel. We started noticing that at the lowest point, and that was pretty weekly, because the news likes, if you ever noticed, the big news comes out on Thursday. You know, that's the big seller. So we were the big news on Thursday, and so we started noticing that was the day that we would be the lowest, because that was when we get hit hard. And there were so many people that would come and visit us and drop by. There was people that were afraid of putting their job in jeopardy if they were seen with us. So they would borrow a car, come to our place. They'd borrow it from a friend so they could drive over there and not be seen. You know, there were so many situations like this, we started calling them rescuers. People started sending cards, emails, letters of encouragement. In fact, you know, I've got a book that I keep on my desk today. You can probably see a lot of it that I keep on my desk today. If I have a down day, I just pull out those letters of encouragement, and I remember those, and they did so much. Rescuers. On very bad days, people would just show up and encourage us out of the clear blue sky. Once a stranger brought by a big old bouquet of flowers. We didn't even know who it was. She left a card and said, I just want you to know, people are praying for you. Rescuers. Tom McLeod, one of your elders here, we knew him a little bit, and he dropped by one day, and he had this large picture frame of a scripture. And he said, I want you to have this, and that still hangs in our lobby today, a rescuer. The elders of the church that we worshiped at called one day. They knew that we have meetings on Tuesday mornings, and they said, we know you have a meeting tomorrow morning, and we'd like to come and bring breakfast for all of your employees, and we'd like to pray with you and all of your employees. And they did. Rescuers. One day, a guy named John Morgan, you know, I knew him from a country music band that we had hired a couple of times. John, thanks for coming tonight. He came by and had a bad story that day, and John just dropped in. Now, it got to where that we didn't know when someone showed up in the lobby if they were going to there to harm us or to encourage us. And so we've got a net right here that screens those people from getting to us. She's our first line of defense. And so she called back and she said, there's a guy named John up here that he wants to talk to you. And, is it, I don't know. I don't know if I want to go up there or not, you know. So, all right, let's go for it. I can take it. So I go up there and it's John. He said, you know, and the rest and I were up there, and he said, I just want you to know that every day I drive by your office to and from work. And for some reason today, I just wanted to stop by. I just want you to know I'm praying for you. Thanks, John. Rescuer. My precious daughter-in-law, Angela. She don't know how much she did for me. She'd send me these emails, especially during these low times, and it was at the perfect time to pick me up. She'd send me emails with scripture of examples in the Bible where people were down and where they got picked up and how they got picked up. And these scriptures, I still keep those today. I love you, Angela. Rescuer. I've got a childhood friend named Philip Masters. Connie, you remember Philip? They lived two doors down, and Philip and I played baseball, basketball as kids. And Philip called David one day. He said, I just want to share a story with you about my dad, Ray Masters. Now, he said, we were at church one day, and he said, the preacher started preaching about greed and corruption, and he mentioned Air Assurance Company, and he said, my dad stood up in the middle of the service, and he said, hold on there, preacher. He said, now, I've known that boy all my life, and that's a bunch of hogwash, and he says, you need to shut up right now. And the preacher moved on to another subject. A rescuer. You know, we have a home and garden show booth every year at the Home and Garden Show, and it's the big event. And this year, or the year this happened, all the negative press, and it was not a good year. You know, people would walk by our booth. They'd be either pointing or they'd make some comment, thief, whatever. I mean, and it was hard on all the employees all weekend long. And I'm telling you, it was another beatdown for us. And the show was over Sunday evening, and we were breaking down the booth, and I noticed an elderly woman out in the aisleway. She's looking up at the banner. It says Air Assurance Company. I can see her mumbling to herself. I said, well, I might as well go out here and take another one for the team. So I walked out there and I said, can I help you? She said, Air Assurance Company. Air Assurance Company. Where have I heard that name? I said, well, probably in the press. We've been in the press a lot here. Oh, yeah. She said, I remember that. She says, oh, I'm going to tell you something. She said, that's a bunch of hogwash. She says, you know, she says, I've seen you on TV, and I've seen you speak to these reporters. And she says, I can tell that you're a Christian by the way you talk. And I said, I'm Mike Rampey. She said, I'm Vivian. I said, will you come in and meet my son and my wife? And she walked in that booth, and we hugged that woman, and she wrote a little scripture on the back of a card and left with us, and we still see her every year at the Home and Garden Show about closing time. So, well, then our lowest day came because I mentioned a state audit, and for 2 years an auditor worked on an audit about us in the Broken Arrow school system. And not one time in that 2 years did this auditor ever call us. Did she ever ask for any information? Did she ever interview any of our employees? And so after about a year and a half, we got a little worried. What's this woman doing? So we wrote her a letter. We said, look, we want you to know we're an open book. And we want to get this cleared up too. So if you'd like, we'll open up our company. Anything that you need, you can get. Anybody you want to interview, you can interview. We want you to come. She did. So after 2 years, We were anticipating this audit. This was going to determine our guilt or innocence. Well, she got compromised and she became biased, and she mysteriously leaked all the documents to the press before it became an official state audit. So we were front page news again. 88 pages of devastating news, rumors and lies and hearsay that essentially would destroy our company, and if believed, could send me to prison. There was absolutely no documentation. By the way, this is one of the first times in state history that a state audit had been thrown completely out. Cheryl was there. But the damage was done. I was lower than I've ever been. I was depressed. And at that time, David couldn't get me up. Narissa couldn't get me up. There wasn't anything that could get me up. And I went home, and let me tell you a little bit about a habit I got. Every morning when I go to work at 6 o'clock in the morning, I got to stop at the Quick Trip at 111th and Elm and get me a cup of coffee on the way to work. Now, Mike Hancock knows. Where's Mike at? I met Mike Hancock at the Quick Trip at 111th and Elm. But that's my habit. I'm going to go get me a cup of coffee. In fact, everybody knows me there. When I walk in, it's, "Hi, Mike." "Hi, Mike." All the staff, they know me. If somebody wanted to knock me off, they'd find me at the Quick Trip at 6 o'clock in the morning. But a rescuer came into my picture that day because I couldn't sleep that night. I was so eat up with this depression and not putting it into God's hands like I should have. And when I couldn't sleep, so at 3 o'clock in the morning, I got up out of bed, I got ready, and I told Narissa, "I'm going to work. I can't sleep. I might as well be working and getting something done." And I walked in the Quick Trip, and the regular staff wasn't there because it's 3 o'clock in the morning. It's a different Quick Trip staff. And a Quick Trip employee came over to me and said, "Are you Mike Ramsey?" And I said, "Well, I'm not Mike Ramsey, I'm Mike Rampey." She said, "You may not remember me. About 6 months ago, we were at a wedding, and you and your wife came over and encouraged me. I'm Alan Trimble's wife, Courtney. And I want you to know that we're praying for you right now." And a rescuer, when I needed it the most. The first person I talked to that morning, it changed my whole attitude that day. That very second. In fact, I don't think Narissa appreciated me calling her at 4 o'clock in the morning and saying, "Narissa, it's going to be okay." It was like God was telling me, "Mike, will you just get out of the way and let me do this? I'm going to take care of you." You see, if this 88-page audit had not been released to the press, it wouldn't have been thrown out. It probably would have become official. An investigative audit then was ordered by the Attorney General, and 8 months later, two auditors spent the next 8 months investigating in our office a lot, and they cleared us of all accusations, rumors, and lies and hearsay. They found nothing, and it was in the paper again, but it's on the 9th page. I believe God has a plan for each of us, and many times He uses simple people to carry out that plan. You know, every time the press would call and want to interview me, I'd have to sit in my office for just a little bit before I went out into the lobby to talk to them and just get my thoughts together. And I would pray to God, and my prayer always was, "God, I don't know what your plan is. I just hope that whatever I say or do, that you'll be proud of me." I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what this plan was. I spent too much time trying to figure out what the plan was. But sometimes the plan may not even happen in our lifetime. We don't know what God's got going on here. Even if we see what we think the plan is, How do we know what the long-range plan is? I love the Joseph story. I love Joseph in the Bible. You know, here's a guy that got sold off by his brothers into slavery. And for, I think it was about 10 years, he was in Potiphar's household, worked his way up to the top, and then he got falsely accused and thrown into prison, and worked his way up to the top of the prison. And then he got out of prison, and he worked himself second in command of Egypt. And I just almost bet that Joseph wasn't sitting around moaning and saying, Lord, what about the dreams? You said that my brothers were going to bow down to me. That was what the dream said. What, you know, I don't think he had time for that. He worked himself up to the top of the ladder, so I don't really think he messed around thinking about that. In fact, in Genesis 42, it says his brothers bowed down to him, and he then remembered the dream. He wasn't dwelling on the dream. He wasn't dwelling on whatever God's plan was. In Genesis 45, he told his brothers, do not be distressed or angry at yourselves. God sent him to save lives and preserve a remnant on earth. So I guess Joseph did see what the plan was, or did he? Did he see that if Israel had not been saved, that Jesus wouldn't have came? He never saw the long-range plan. Doesn't it feel good to envision the arms of Jesus around us when we're suffering and we're having trials? Just envisioning Jesus' arms around us, doesn't that feel good to kind of think about that? So let me ask you, if the church is the body of Jesus, aren't the arms part of the body? Are we not part of the arms? Are we not the arms of Jesus? Are we not supposed to put our arms around those people that are suffering? What a responsibility we have. In Matthew 5:45, it says, he causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and he sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. So everyone on earth is going to suffer trials. They're going to suffer. Everyone. You want to do it with the arms of Jesus around you or not? I think I'd rather have the arms of Jesus. You all are the arms. What is your choice? So here's my suggestions. Let God be in control. Pray. Have faith. Be the arms of Jesus when you see others suffering or having trials. Wrap your arms around them. And when you suffer, let those arms of Jesus wrap around you. Be an encourager. Be a rescuer. I'd like to end with this slideshow.
Lord, you know everything I've done, every thought I've had. You know everyone, and Lord, you know every time I fall, still you come to my rescue when I call. And Lord, you hear every idle word, every thoughtless deed, how it seems absurd that, Lord, you give not what I am due, but mercy. You come to my rescue. He is always there for me, and he'll be right there for you. Lord, I know I don't deserve it, but you love me anyhow. You come to my rescue. Keep on coming to my rescue. You come to my rescue. People coming to my rescue. Come to my